Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the presentation, Management System Performance Improvement and High-Level Structure Benefits. I'm Mike Richmond, your host for Exemplar Global's online expo dedicated to career pathways. This session is presented by Chris Spire, who has had a notable 55-year career with numerous roles in production, environmental, and occupational health and safety management, quality management, auditing, and consulting. He also has a book coming out at the start of next year titled Why Implement Certified ISO Management Systems and What You Need to Know to Implement the Systems Successfully. In this session, Chris will give us the benefits of his wisdom and experience to consider the 2015 introduction of the high-level structure in ISO 9001 and ISO 14001. He'll demonstrate the benefits of that change and show how it will impact the future of management system standards. So Chris, thank you for joining us here at the Expo.
Thank you, Mike, and it's a pleasure being here and being able to give this presentation. This is my first of hopefully a series of these that I'll be doing over the next year, 2, 3, whatever. Anyway, let's get started. This presentation highlights the management system performance improvement over the past 20 years and what drove that improvement, particularly the management system high-level structure. I'm going to begin by going back to really just before the turn of the century. And at that point, we had two ISO management systems, ISO 9001 2015, which is a quality management system, and then ISO 14001, the environmental management system. The quality management system came out in 1987, and then 9 years later, the environmental. Now, there are 4 other management systems listed up there, but you'll notice that those are really management systems based on the 2 above, but they are written by the industry for which they are responsible. And so, for example, the RC 14001 is based on ISO 14001, but it's the responsible care management system. Came out in 96, same time as 14001. And included, besides the exact text of 14001, additional responsible care requirements, and included in responsible care, health, safety, and security in all the clauses that are in the 14001. The other 3, telecommunications QMS, an automotive QMS, and an aviation, space, and defense QMS. And I highlight those because those are all the standards that had come out by the turn of the century. And so we move into the turn of the century, early 2000 up until about 2005. Really no additional standards came out during that period, but something else happened. We, as I was part of ANAB at that time, ran into a situation which we named Outcomes Matter. And we started hearing complaints, if you look at the top, from employees and unions talking about the safety of certified management systems being no better than the uncertified systems. On the right, the NGOs and community started complaining about the performance of these certified management systems, which they expected to be better than the uncertified. The customers were complaining about quality issues on certified systems, and government agencies were complaining about compliance. So obviously, we at ANAB, and I was one of the chairs of one of the 2 committees there, started to try to address this issue and see what we could do. we had a lot of communications with our certification bodies, and also attended a number of conferences and presented there on this issue. Fortunately, the issue also got to ISO, and ISO decided, hey, we need to do something. And it's got to be pretty serious and really take it into account. Otherwise, we may lose all these management systems. Let's now fast forward to 2023, and this is where we are today. Now, this shows the largest of the 8 management systems. And you see at the very top, the quality management system, environmental behind it, and then occupational health and safety management system. And look at the numbers up there, the number of sites. And I'm willing to guess most people don't realize the quantity of sites that are certified to these management systems globally. You can see, if you look at the bottom, a total of 2.3 million sites are certified to at least one and maybe even 2 or even 3 of the management systems. The number of certificates that are out there is 1.5, 1.6 million. So the system is really flourishing. And I'm only showing you the top 8. Actually, right now, there are 33 additional management systems. So the management systems is with us and probably going to be with us for a long time to come. Let's dig into the management systems now. And I want to look at the new terms that were entered in 2015. That was when ISO 14001 and 9001 came up for revision, or one of their revisions, because there were a number in between. And in that, ISO got much more specific as far as what they wanted from those technical committees that write these management systems. And what I'm going to go through are the actual clauses that were entered into those 2015 systems. And we'll talk about how that particularly addresses the performance issue that we just talked about. To start with, let's go to the first clause, at least requirements clause in the standard, and that's clause 4. Under 4.1, ISO wrote that the organizations need to understand the organization and its context. And what that means is to look at the internal and external issues that the organization is facing. And then 4.2, right behind it, understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. And so that was a whole new concept to us. It was followed actually by 6.1, where they said you need to identify the risks and opportunities in 4.1 and 4.2, and then develop actions to address those risks and opportunities. This chart you see below is something I actually developed when the standard first came out in 2015 to help a client of mine, and then passed it on to a few other clients, which they made slightly different version, but basically did the same thing. I'll quickly take you through it. You can see up top, the first row has issues, both internal and external. And this was just an example from a particular client that I used to put this together. And so they listed their internal and external issues. And the point I always brought to my clients, when you think in the terms of the issues or the expectations of your interested parties, you need to be thinking in terms of items that are going to do one of two things: either make you the best in your industry or put you out of business. And so those are the type of things that need to be up there. And it needs to be performed, or the analysis needs to be performed by your senior management team. So you really need to think pretty hard on what belongs there. Now let's turn to the performance improvement, which is obviously the goal we had for this revision, and the various clauses that are built in here to address those things, not only performance improvement itself, but also other aspects of the management system that can drive that performance improvement. So we'll begin with 4.4. So we're still in that 4 clause, the first one in the standards. And that is to enhance its performance, the organization shall establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve the management system. Under 10.1, at the end of the standard, they came back and said, the organization shall determine opportunities for improvement and implement necessary actions to achieve the intended outcomes of its management system. And under 10.3, the organization shall continually improve the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the management system. So they come right out in the beginning and then finish it off at the end in the standard to say performance improvement is something you guys really need to take into account when you develop or modify your management systems. Under 5.1, leadership and commitment, this was an interesting one because ISO always felt that in those early days of these management systems, and really up until they did the 2015 revisions, that top management wasn't totally involved or aware of what was going on with the management system. They would assign it to somebody in the organization, a director, a manager, whatever, and it was that person's responsibility to drive what was going on as far as the management system. Under the new standard, they said that's not going to be allowed anymore. Top management under 5.1.1, top management shall demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to the management system. And then listed 9, depending on the management system, 9 to 13 listed requirements. And I'll talk about those that fell 11, 12, 13, and 10 actually below. So these are things that top management needs to be working on, have the authority and responsibility for, even though they may still have somebody leading the program itself. And so these are also all auditable. So when I would do an audit, I would sit down with the CEO or the senior manager, plant manager, whatever, the highest ranking person there, say, how are you implementing these 9 or 10 or 13 requirements that you have out here. And just quickly looking at the ones that were the 10 to 13 is that under 511D, under ISO 9001, they talked about or required promoting the use of the process approach and risk-based thinking. To me, why isn't that included in all the others? And when I'm auditing an environmental management system or a health and safety management system, I say you need to do that too, even though it's only in the ISO 9001 standard, because the process approach is something that you need to build into all the management systems. And then under 51K, they had, and this is 45,001, which came out in 2018. So 3 years after 9,001 and 14,001. And K said, protecting workers from reprisals when reporting incidents, hazards, risks, and opportunities. Right below it, in L, ensuring that the organization establishes and implements a process or processes for consultation and participation of workers. And I have 5.4 listed in there because I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but it goes ahead and talks about what are the specifics that you need to be doing as far as requirements within this employee consultation and participation. And then the 5.1M, supporting the establishment and functioning of health and safety committees. Now, this was new to the standards when ISO 45001 came out in 2018. And I'm hoping that it will get built into the other standards going forward, because it's an extremely valuable benefit of the management systems to use the workers in helping improve your management system, improve your processes. I experienced it personally when I was the head of environmental health and safety at Anheuser-Busch, and we ended up starting teams, and it took off to the point we didn't even know how many teams we had out there because they were doing so many great things. So I'm a strong proponent of that. One thing, we talked about the process approach, and that, in fact, it wasn't included in the all the management systems, but only 9001. And this is a chart I put together to show that it really applies to all of them. And here's how the process flows for the management system itself. And so it's something you can look at your leisure when you review it again or look at this particular slide. Let's turn now to 6.2, quality objectives and planning to achieve them. Obviously, when you do the analysis on the risks and opportunities, where do they need to end up? And that's in quality objectives and the planning actions to need to address them. 6.2.2 says, planning how to achieve its quality objectives, the organization shall determine what will be done, what resources will be required, who will be responsible, when it will be completed, and how the results will be evaluated. And I listed it under quality because In the other two, environmental and health and safety, it was already there. For some reason, the quality management system did not include this requirement before 2015. It was added after 2015, which I was so happy to see. I used to kind of jokingly say, what do you do on the quality side? Just write objectives and then pray that they get done. You don't have a process to do that. Well, in the 2015 standard, that was added to their standard as well as in the other standards. And so it was a good move in that direction to get them online as well. Under 8.1, and 8 is a unique clause because that's the one clause in the management system, although it isn't followed completely in the management systems. But in this clause, the particular management system has the opportunity to add those requirements that are specific to their particular focal point, whether it's environmental, health and safety, quality, IT, whatever it is. And so that's what these are. And typically they are for a specific management system. The first one I talk about really, in fact, the first two I talk about really aren't. They're for all three of the management systems that I'm focusing on. And the management of change reads, the organization shall establish a process or processes for the implementation and control of planned, temporary, and permanent changes that impact performance, including new products, services, and processes, or changes to existing products, services, and processes, changing to legal requirements and other requirements, changing in knowledge or information about hazards and risks, and developments in knowledge and technology. So some very specific requirements to deal with management of change. And having personally seen two situations at Anheuser-Busch where, thank goodness, we were following that and having EHS people in some of these change meetings prevented some what could have been catastrophic results. Outsourced processes, again, was a new subject in the management systems, or a new requirement. And it says, in outsourced processes, the organization shall ensure that outsourced processes are controlled or influenced. The type and extent of control or influence to be applied to the processes shall be defined within the management system. Now, I found when this first came out and I was auditing a lot of clients, I found that they were really confused because this clause had not been in previous management systems, and they really didn't know, what do they mean by outsourced processes? And so I put together this little chart for them to say, here's what we're talking about: outsourced processes of contractors and suppliers. And I've provided the list for you there. You can look at it at your leisure in the future. But this list shows that really these are the things that they need to be paying attention to. And basically having controls. They can't just say, well, we hired this contractor to do that, and they're supposed to be good at doing these things. No, you need to make sure they have the procedures and processes in place to do it, and to do it effectively. Again, now we're in the 8.1, which is the one where individual management systems can put in some things that are unique. And this is one of those. This first came out in 2015 in ISO 14001, and it'll remain just in 14001, and that's life cycle perspective. It's a new concept. Again, people struggled with this initially. Probably by now they got it down pretty well. But basically, it's not asking that you do a life cycle analysis for those of you that are familiar with that technique, but really just take a perspective. And they spell out, as you can see here, consistent with the life cycle perspective, the organization shall establish controls as appropriate to ensure that its environmental requirements are or is addressed in the design and development process for the product or service, considering each life cycle stage. Under B, determine its environmental requirements for the procurement of products and services as appropriate. C, communicate its relevant environmental requirements to external providers, including contractors. And D, consider the need to provide information about potential significant environmental impacts associated with the transportation or delivery, use, end-of-life treatment, and final disposal of its products and services. And finally, the organization shall maintain documented information to the extent necessary to have confidence that the processes have been carried out as planned. So a whole new concept in the management systems, and it's strictly in 14,001, but it's a very important one. Again, I go back to my previous experience at Anheuser-Busch, and when they were deciding about putting in plastic beer containers and selling them, one of my environmental people were in there, and they said, wait a minute, is this bottle that you're proposing going to be able to be recycled? And they said, oh, we don't know. And we found out it was not able to be recycled. And so the project was stopped before it went any further. So again, the importance of the life cycle analysis can be very important to a customer or to the company. Okay, let's turn to 9.1.2. This is really strictly for 9001, although they didn't include it in the clause 8, which they really should have, but it's there and we live with it that way. Customer focus and satisfaction. The organization shall monitor customers' perceptions of the degree to which their needs and expectations have been fulfilled. The organization shall determine the methods for obtaining, monitoring, and reviewing this information. This again came out for the first time in 2015, and a lot of my clients early on were really struggling because they would say, and I'm sure you all have seen this, I send out a survey and they don't send it back to me. And so how am I supposed to get this information? And I would say to them, you need to figure out a way. And I had a couple of suggestions, like at meetings where you bring in a sales meeting where you bring in all the customers, and then before they leave, you hand them a survey and say, fill it out or you can't leave the room. Something to that nature to get the information, because you have to have it and then work on it. This is the 5.4 I talked about earlier, which was at that point only in 45,001. Again, I'm hoping it moves to all of our management systems, and that's consultation and participation of workers. Okay, now we're going to change direction a little bit, because all of these modifications that were made to the 9001 and 14,001, which really drove performance improvement in these organizations, they could have stopped there, but they didn't. They said, okay, this is now going to become what we term the high-level structure. And so what that meant basically is that when those go into effect, any new or revised management system will have this structure in place, so that you can no longer just operate independently as a technical committee within ISO and write your standard or modify your standard to your heart's content without considering what the other management systems are doing. So basically, it's saying in 2015, they turned to the two technical committees for 9001 and 14,001, said, you guys are going to work together on this one. And you're going to do it in concert. And we expect them to be very much the same, other than in Clause 8. And the benefit of that was basically it simplified the development of new standards. It facilitated the integration of standards. If obviously the language is pretty much the same between 2 or 3 standards, it's easy to write one procedure for driving all 2 of them or 3 of them. It saves time in the development, implementation, and auditing of the integrated standards. It avoids discrepancy due to differences in the text of the documents, and the cost savings provided by the integration of the standards can create an additional incentive by organizations to implement 1, 2, or even 3 standards. Now we're going to take a look at these next 3 charts, which are just a continuation of one big chart, and see how there are a few discrepancies or differences between the 3 standards, 9001, 14,001, and 45,001 across the standards after this 2015 revision, and in the case of 45,001, the 2018 issuance of that standard. What I've done is said the differences are in the white text. And so when you look at this first screen, you see, geez, most of this stuff is already in black. So they're following across the board for the 3 standards. And even when you look at the white ones, you can see the first one, 4.3, all they did different was QMS, EMS, or OHSMS. So really not anything different. And right below it, the same thing. So they just spelled out what their standard was. And even below that, quality. The only difference was down at the bottom, 5.4, which we talked about. and that was the consultation and worker participation. It was only in 45,001. Hopefully, it'll be in these two other standards before long. Here's the next section. This is clauses 6 and 7 in the standards. And again, you can see to some degree the same thing. Now there's some white text up in here and here under 612, 613, 614, but those are really just things that are unique to those two standards and will stay that way. So that's one that's totally acceptable, no problem there. In 6.2, it's again just naming the standard. 621, it's pretty identical. But under the 622, you see this is the planning actions to achieve the objectives. Its documentation is not required in 9001. It's not required in 14,001, although quite frankly, most of the 14,001 clients I saw were documenting it anyway. It is required in 45,001. And this is another case where I was concerned about quality. In fact, I wrote a nonconformance against a client only to be shown that it really isn't required in their standard to document it. And to my surprise, they were correct. And then the other difference is really, there's not much there. And then the final ones, we're pretty much facing the same thing. It's pretty much the same. Oh, they added the word performance in ISO 45001, but it was assumed in the other two as well. Customer satisfaction, which really should have been placed in 8.1 or 8, was in 9.1.2. We talked about that being a nuance in this 2015 standard, and it should stay in it should stay in the standard unique to ISO 9001, but it should be moved to 8. But I'm not too concerned if it does or does not. And then they have the worded verbiage analysis and evaluation under 913. And again, that's the only place there. Otherwise, they're all the same. So really, as you can see, they're pretty damn similar in everything that you see here, other than a few minor things where they differ. Now, remember, this standard, this top level structure, now goes and already has over the last number of years to all the other existing management systems when they're revised, or any new ones that are developed. And so you can assume, need to check, there may be some discrepancies, but in those 33 additional standards that have been developed since about 2005 to current, they should mostly all have this structure in place at this point. Now I want to really show what I'm a strong proponent of, and that's taking the management system high-level structure and driving it into developing a business management system. I did this with two clients that I had starting in about 2017, right before ISO 45000 came out. And basically, we were taking an organization, the first one with 155 facilities across 40 countries. And we were saying, we're going to put those all 155 facilities under what they're now calling the business management system. And basically, it was the combination of ISO 9001, 14001, and 45001. And it becomes the way they run the business. So basically, for all 155 facilities, they are going to go ahead and incorporate and take that one procedure for developing their management system and make it a procedure for all 155 facilities. And obviously, that's going to take place over a period of time, but they started with the ones that already had a couple of the management systems in place, the environmental and the quality, and then moved to the ones that just had one system, and then finally the ones that had no certified management systems. The second organization was an organization that had 14 facilities in US and Canada that I worked with them on the movement to the business management system. However, they have 73 facilities in 33 countries in their home office in Italy. And to my knowledge, they are doing the same thing across all those facilities as well. So they developed the business management procedure for the three management systems, 9K, 14K, and 45K. Their plan was to bring all facilities under the business management system over time, as I stated. This organization also assigned all their vice presidents and directors in the North American office, and hopefully in the Italian office as well, responsibility for the risks, opportunities, and objectives identified within the BMS. So it was no longer a case that, hey, that belonged to the EHS people or the quality people or this. It belonged to every department. And the head of that department was accountable for what was done. And so when I did an audit of their corporate office, which I made a few of them during the period until I retired, it included marketing, sales, IT, research and development, customer service, as well as all the production departments. I audited every one of them, and they told me what they were doing and what was in their responsibility as part of their work in one of these other functions. And so that basically concludes my presentation. As you can see, I've listed my name, phone number, and email here. So if you have questions after you look at it again or think about it now and want to get a hold of me, please feel free to do that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Chris Beyer. Excellent presentation on the high-level structure and what it means for auditors and auditing. I think that was really useful for everybody out there, so we really appreciate that. Those of you who are watching this on demand, you can, as Chris just mentioned, you can ask him questions. He just showed you his email on the prior slide. You can also write us at info@exemplarglobal.org, and we'll get your questions over to Chris if you do have them. So feel free to do that. Also, of course, claim your CPD. It's always important to claim CPD to show your commitment to continuous education and career development in the field. So be sure to do that after you've completed watching this session. So thanks again, Chris. Thank you for doing that. Really great presentation again. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you all next time here at the Exemplar Global Expo. So long.